welcome to the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast. You know, they say time flies when you're having fun, and that must be the case because somehow today, August 4th of 2025, we are recording our 100th episode of this podcast. I know.
I wish I had champagne.
So
I should have opened champagne.
I
Wow,
know. That was
100.
kind of a fail on my part. How did I not bring champagne? But we have another fun wine that we're drinking. You guys, it's certainly been a journey over the past few years since we launched in the fall of 2020. And we're so appreciative of everyone who's been there, growing with us, seeing us through, and also for the people who are joining us on the newer side. We love all of you guys for being there. We're so thankful that you've supported us in this way. We've talked to a lot of different people. The show's had a lot of iterations, everyone from like professional baseball players and comedians to supermodels and wine critics. No two conversations have been the same. And it's sort of proved this theory that wine brings people together from all walks of life to allow for some truly memorable moments. And speaking of memorable moments, that brings me to the theme of today's episode, since my guest and I had a few of those already this year. Laura, as it turns out, we're either really good at predicting the future or writing our own destinies, because in December of 2024, if you will recall, on our Unfiltered Wrap show, we talked about how, number one, you guys said Enclos was the best new restaurant in wine country. And it was just awarded not one, but 2 Michelin stars in its debut year. I mentioned how I hoped to get married this year in 2025, which is thankfully happening next month. Hooray. I'm fine. If anyone is wondering, everything is fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. But we also talked about the places on our bucket list that we wanted to cross off of our list in 2025. And you guys, we have an update.
We did it.
We did it.
We did
Cat's
it.
out of the bag. Laura, where did you tell us that you wanted to go?
I declared that I wanted to cross the equator and go to the Southern Hemisphere. Never been. And it's it's a pretty big area.
Yeah, that was a big bucket.
It's a pretty easy target to shoot for because there's like half the world. But I ended up in Uruguay, which is a very small country in South America and very much below the equator.
Yes. And do you recall where I told you I wanted to go?
You said you wanted to go to Germany.
I did. And that very same spring and that very same week that you were in South America, I hopped across the pond and I got to Germany. I did like a whole wine tour. It was amazing. So we decided to come back together now that we've crossed those things off of our bucket list, to recap those 2 wine regions that seemingly have nothing in common. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But what I do know for sure that they have in common, based on my conversation with Laura and based on my experience in Germany, is that these are sleeper destinations. I'm calling them sleeper destinations as wine travel regions. Maybe Uruguay more so than Germany, but I do feel like Germany is a little bit slept on. So today we're going to be talking about those regions, why those places were on our list in the first place, expectations versus reality, because they are 2 different things. I assume, Laura, Uruguay was not as anticipated.
There were definitely some surprises just in general with the travel. And it was an unexpected region. It's not a place we drink a lot of or study a lot of. So like, I think there was a lot of newness to it, but also so much familiarity. If you are someone that loves wine and loves, the classic regions, you will understand very quickly why Uruguay is the way it is and why it's special, but why it also fits into the larger conversation of wine.
I assume when you had said South America, you were happy to hit, any of those many regions that produce wine in South America. But as you said, Uruguay is not necessarily a region that we put a lot of emphasis on when we're studying for exams, which is probably a shame in a lot of regards. So I'm excited to hear about your experience. We'll obviously talk about both of our experiences, and then give you guys some takeaways and tips should you be so inclined to book your own flight and head to either one of these places, which if you haven't made a bucket list for yourself already, this is your sign to do so. And speaking of signs to do so,
set your intentions. What else can we set our intentions for?
what are your intentions for this podcast? Hopefully is to join the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast wine club. That would be my hope for you starting here and now, which is 4 wines every other month selected by myself and the Wine Access team. And as it turns out, 2 wines in the shipment this month, these 2 months are coming from our travels. So the wine we have today is actually a wine that Laura found in Uruguay. And the wine from last week's episode, that was the Rings Pinot Noir that I found when I was in Germany, or rather got to visit when I was in Germany. There's actually another wine coming up that I did find while I was in Germany that I'm very excited about. So these places are not only fun for us to visit, they're also a means for us to go find really cool things that maybe aren't making their way over here to the United States already. So if you want to get in on that action, you can find everything you need to join in the description below. Hopefully you have a little wine in your glass. Okay.
I absolutely do. I'm drinking a little
Amazing.
bit of Bodega Garzon, Albariño.
Bodega Garzon. Yes, that's right. So why don't you kick us off with the wine that's in our glass today?
Albariño is definitely more widely known for its Spanish roots. It's from Galicia, from the northwest of Spain, and it traveled across the ocean to Uruguay and has kind of found its footing there. What's so incredible is that they have these granite soils, right? So the granite soils is what makes Albariño and Rías Baixas so special. It's kind of the characteristic of that region, geologically. So in Uruguay, they have this really, really, really old granite. So it just kind of made sense to experiment with a grape that does well in granite, like Albariño, and because it's coastal, because it does get a lot of influence from the water. If you don't know where exactly Uruguay is, I totally understand. It's not a country. It's a small country. It's about 1 million people. It is, it's a not huge player in the world of wine. They do produce a lot of beef, but it's right kind of nestled above Argentina, kind of across from this body of water, and then below Brazil. So on the eastern side of South America. And it does have this really intense influence from the Atlantic, kind of like Rías Baixas, kind of like that area of, the Pyrenees area of France and Spain. So a lot of similarities there with their history of viticulture as well. And so Albariño has found a home there, and it's got this nice salinity. It's got this nice roundness, this fruit to it, that peach that we just love. And because they're on the water, they get a lot of shellfish, and it just goes perfectly with the cuisine. And I know, if you do know anything about Uruguay, you think about this one grape, which is Tannat, which is a really heavy red. And they do grow. It's their most widely planted grape. They grow a lot of it. They drink a lot of it. Goes well with all the beef that they do, all the asada. But the counterpart to that would be some Sauvignon Blanc and really this Albariño. And I fell in love with it. We had some aged Albariño. We did one seaside tasting where we tasted, 10-year-olds plus Albariño, and it aged beautifully. They're doing it in this now they're doing it in these like really big cigar barrels. So they're getting a lot of this lees contact, this really kind of this richness to it. They're neutral barrels, but they're getting a lot of character from that. And they're making these really age-worthy Albariños you can get them for a song. I mean, they're really fun to find in the market here in the US, and they are out there. So, really great to share this wine. I love Albariño. And funny enough, I was maybe like a month before Uruguay, I was in Spain. So I followed the trail of the grape.
Okay, so you've been on a Spanish grape kick for like a minute.
Yeah.
Was this done in cigar barrel or no? Because it's got a little color, it's got a little richness to it, like more so than what you might think of when you think of Albariño.
They do this one in concrete, with some leaves, so get some oxygen integration there. This one isn't done. They have these couple crazy cigar barrels that are twice as long as a regular barrel. They're twice the size, and so that's just for one of their high end top of the line Albariño. So not this one. This one's done in some concrete. But it does pick up that richness, that lees character, and it just gives it a little bit more oomph than your chill and sip Albariño.
Yeah, it reminds me of a little of I think if you're a Chardonnay lover, you can get behind this because there's a richness in a texture. But also if you're someone that likes like more of the Bordeaux Blanc style of Sauvignon Blanc that's got a little Semillon in there, or that has been done in like some used French oak barrels, like you said, from that Lees stirring, there's kind of a richness to this wine, but it retains its freshness. It's like incredibly zippy. And when you smell it, like it's just like this is a very cold wine for me right now. It is jumping out of the glass, even
Mm-hmm.
at this icy cold temperature, which, signifies just how aromatic it truly is. But it's just such a delicious wine. I'm very excited to have this like late summer, early fall. I'm always looking for those like transition white wines.
But what I didn't anticipate, and I guess I should have, I just didn't think about it, is that it was fall when we were there.
Oh,
So we were
yes,
eating
that's
like
true.
it was tomato season, and it was like the
Mm.
beginning of like harvest. It's the end of their grape harvest, and the beginning of like kind of like fall vegetables. We had like roasted squash, and
Oh,
yeah, I mean the wine was
what a
incredible. It was
treat.
it was outstanding. There was such good produce, and so it really did lend itself to this wine.
That's such a fun thing that I forgot to consider because I went to South America. Oh gosh, it was post harvest, so it would have been like, yeah, I guess it would have been like late fall, and it was just starting to like crest into that like that territory, and it was so nice because it was obviously warm and kind of rainy here in the spring, but in the fall it was so beautiful. And I think for some people who are, for our fall girlies out there who
Yeah.
just want autumn all year round,
Yeah,
so
it worked.
fun.
It was, we went to a couple of restaurants and I was like, oh my God, tomatoes on the menu already, And I was
I
like, wait,
know.
no, it's perfect. It's time. Because, in Napa, we wait.
Tell me, where do you fly into? And how long is that journey from SFO?
So that is probably the most surprising thing to me is that I didn't realize how far you're going. And because you're not actually traveling time zones, right? You're only going like 4 time zones, but you're traveling took like 13 to 20 hours.
Woo!
Yeah, flew to Sao Paulo and then Sao Paulo to Montevideo. And yeah, and actually some people that traveled with us, because it was a really short trip, it's a 4-day trip. So you really are just there. You hit the ground running. You go to the winery. We went to an olive oil press. You have a couple meals, and then you're back on the flight. And a few people on our trip, this is like an organized wine trip that we're lucky enough to do, missed their connecting flights, and there's just not a lot of flights into Montevideo. Like there's one a day, so they missed a
Yeah.
flight. So they had to fly in order to stay on track to make it to the winery, they had to fly to Buenos Aires and then take a boat across,
Okay.
and then a boat to a car to meet us. They traveled like 30 some odd hours.
Okay. So moral of the story, do not miss your
Do not
flight.
miss your flight. Do not miss your flight. There are not a lot of flights in, but there are boat rides. I mean, if you get stuck in another country, it was far. It was far to go and not change a lot of time zones. I guess I'm just used to going to Europe or Japan.
Yeah. It is strange. I remember flying into BA and then flying up to Mendoza. And it was strange to fly that far and still kind of be I was on the East Coast and still kind of be in the same general
Yeah.
time zone. But like to your point, it is a long way to go for a wine region. And I think there's so much happening in South America. So it sounds like, if you can fly into Buenos Aires and then, do Mendoza, maybe pop over to like Uruguay, like that might be the way to do it so that you're not screwing too many things up.
Yeah, I think a few people tacked on some extra days and went to, Argentina, went to Chile. I mean, those are the biggest producers, and Brazil are the biggest producers of wine in South America. So a lot of people use that as an opportunity to go check out these other places. But I would say like Uruguay has such a interesting culture of this, like, the Basque region, the Basque travelers went over there. The Basque people were shipbuilders. They went over there. They planted vines, and that's why you have Tannat there. And like they have this very unique kind of history. Yeah, a really cool place. Not a place to be overlooked. And I did get to see some capybaras, I will say.
I don't know what that is. Tell me.
They're like, now I'm going to get it wrong. I don't think they're a marsupial. They're not little. They're a little bear, like a big beaver.
Okay.
I think they're a rodent. They're in the rodent family, but they're only in South America, and they're cute. They're like 80 pounds.
80 pounds is like a sizable animal.
They're like, but they're very like, we stopped. They let us kind of walk up to them. They had their little babies.
They let you walk up to them?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Are these like
they're having
domesticated?
capybaras are having a thing with like in the stuffed animal world. Like that's the stuffed animal kids want.
All right. Well, I'll look it up after and we'll flash a photo of it on the screen.
Yeah, I have
video.
pictures.
I've never heard of this.
So yeah, that was kind of my, my quick sip on Uruguay. I loved it. And I think the grape that I was really most excited about, I love the Albariño. Absolutely, hands down. They make a little bit of Pinot Noir that I thought was really stunning. And a lot of the Pinot Noir they make, they make it into their sparkling production, particularly for Bodega Garzon. But the dry still Pinot, I was like, oof, it's hard to sell. It's just, South American Pinot Noirs there's a few great ones and it's a tough market. I get that, but the wine was stunning.
How hot does it get there? I mean, I know you're coastal, so that, the ocean helps to cool things down, but is it coastal in the way that like Sonoma, Santa Barbara is coastal, or is it even cooler than that?
They kind of compared it. They compared it to more of like a Virginia without the humidity. So like Four Seasons.
Because there's so many examples of Virginia.
Like Four Seasons, maybe closer to California is so unique with its climate. Yeah. But I think more of a winter than California gets.
Okay.
Like the leaves will lose, the trees will lose leaves, I think was the understanding in the fall. Like it really kind of had like a more of a, like Oregon kind of a little bit cooler.
Okay. So truly Four Seasons, it's going to get cooler, but I'm in Pennsylvania right now.
But no snow. No snow.
No snow.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, like a Carolina.
Okay, so I guess Virginia is kind of accurate because that was my first instinct was like there is actually on this side of the Atlantic there's very few coastal wine regions that people pay attention to. Virginia kind of being one of the only ones, obviously like Long Island and a handful over there, but weirdly along the like even in South America, Mendoza is pretty far inland. It's not and it's not coastal. So in the fall, was it like lovely 60s temperatures?
It was really nice. We took a boat ride, and this is where the trip is totally going to differ from your Germany trip. Okay. We took a boat ride at sunset to drink bubbles and just to settle into being there. It was very, it was really, really relaxed. Some people jumped in the water. It was a little too cold for me. I'm a little, I lived in Hawaii long enough where I'm a baby about it, but like people went in the water.
Okay.
At sunset into, so it was 70s.
Okay. So that's not bad. That's like a lovely early fall. And then, in terms of like other wineries, I know you've really just focused on Bodegas Garzon, which is great. And if you're going to Uruguay, like that is kind of the winery that you go to. And we can talk a little bit about the specificities of what they have to offer. Because I know there's a restaurant and like a hotel, or at least I've heard that. But are there how many other wineries besides Garzon are there to kind of pop around to?
I think there's a few. I mean, they're the biggest. Garzon is definitely the one that's on the map and put Uruguay on the map. There are several others. There's maybe 100, maybe somewhere in there, maybe 20 of them export. They do make...
Oh, that's more than I thought.
They do export a lot to Brazil.
That makes sense.
To be like one of the places where a lot of their red wine goes. And other South American countries, but no one that's doing, I think, at the scale of Garzon. So Garzon's owned by Bulgaroni, who owns other wineries and other projects around the world.
And they're very poor. They have no money.
I was wondering where the helicopter lands at the winery, and they were like, yeah, over there. And over there, and wherever
they are some of the nicest people, and they have a beautiful estate in Napa Valley. But it's very clear when you go to one of their properties that like things are okay for them.
Yeah, they're definitely. And so they've invested in this region, they've invested in this country, they've invested in the facility, the winemaking, and I think it's exciting, that like it'll elevate the whole region, right? And it'll
Yeah.
elevate everything around them and have people pay attention to the other wineries. But at present, no one's doing anything like they're doing.
Yeah. No, and I think it's great. The first time I had ever really heard of Uruguay as a wine producing region was courtesy of Bodegas Garzon. And I think it was when they had, it wasn't like Gilles de Chambord, the master sommelier
Yes.
was like, he was working with them and he was based in Napa and he started bringing some of their wines. I remember when I was working at press, he was talking about Tannat and he was bringing some of their wines. And that was the first I had heard of it, but it sounded very cool. And it is what it takes a lot of times for wine regions like that to be put on the map. You need heavy investment. You need someone that is really going to put the money in the right places, to do the right things, to find the right grapes and get the right people, and bring people, to the what I have only seen pictures of, which is like this very beautiful estate hotel winery situation.
It's stunning. I mean, just
Yeah.
like stunningly beautiful. The architecture, the art, just the attention to detail, the restaurant. I mean, they have Francis Malman consulting on the
Yeah.
food and like had built the kitchen. I mean, there is just this, they were the first LEED certified building in a winery in South America. Like they really want to do it all and do it all correctly. And I think it shows in the product. A winery that like, so someone on the trip mentioned, or maybe someone that worked there had mentioned, like they're not that they're trying to aspire to, but like that kind of has a similar kind of trajectory is like Moussar, Chateau Moussar in Lebanon, where like
Lebanon.
you think of Chateau Moussar before you think of the country it's in.
Yes.
It's like the winery has kind of risen above it, and so I thought that was an interesting comparison where like Garzon is being traded on in Bordeaux in Plus, like so it's almost going to supersede maybe the country. Maybe that's their 10-year plan, 100-year plan, but interesting to see where they might go. And Garzon's a pretty young place, but wines have been produced in Uruguay for hundreds of years. So
yeah. They're doing okay.
Yeah, just an exciting place. I think you need to do it. You need to go. You need to check it out. You need to see a capybara. And have an empanada.
I do love empanadas. That was my favorite part about being in Mendoza was like every afternoon it was like somebody brought out a box of empanadas and that was like your afternoon snack. Big fan.
Yeah, I asked them, but what makes them all different, like regionally, culturally between Argentina, like everyone does empanadas, and so like it's a very personal thing. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Some have raisins, some have olives, some have cinnamon, and that's more of like a an Argentinian thing. And these actually came with a tomato dipping sauce. Like it's just whether they're baked or fried. Like we had a lot of heated empanada conversations.
I'm sure. And you alluded to the beef situation earlier. I know in a lot of South America, like cattle is a big part of the culture and maybe even more so in Uruguay. I have to ask the question because it's so damn good in Argentina. Did you have any of the dairy? Did you have any like gelato of any sorts?
So beef was huge, and like there's I think more cows than humans in Uruguay, and like one of the highest per capita cow, like ratios. The beef was amazing, and so one of the meals was just like every cut just grilled in the middle of the table.
That it is the best part about being in South America.
It was fantastic. And then like the dessert of choice everywhere was dulce de leche.
Yeah.
So it was, essentially just cook milk. You cook milk until it becomes caramel. Like, so yeah, really like, tail to nose eating here.
I love it.
And yeah, the dairy was great. I don't think we saw any almond milk anywhere.
Okay. Cow's milk only, hopefully for our oat milk connoisseurs.
Yeah, it was, but we were on the ocean, we're on the sea for the first couple of days, and we had a ton of shellfish, and it was really nice. And then we ended with like this like hard like meat meal in the Tannat, and you're like, I get it. I get what this place is about.
Well, speaking of Tannat, we have to touch on that before we jump over to Germany. The
Yes.
Tannat for me has always been a difficult grape to fall in love with.
Hmm.
I sort of assume that a lot of like the best Tannat is probably not leaving Uruguay, or if it is, it's going to Brazil, it sounds like.
Yeah.
What was your impression of Tannat? Is it different than what you had tasted in the US or mostly the same?
I don't know if I had like any aha surprising to not
Okay.
moment like I did. You expect it. It's just one of the most tannic grapes.
Well, and this is a subjective opinion from me that it's not my first choice because I don't love big tannic grapes, but if you love
Yeah.
tannin, you know.
I think there's with age, like anything
Mm,
tannic, it does start to show this real incredible depth. It just takes time. And I think that's, if it's not built in, like with Italy, we have these two tannic wines. We talk about Sangiovese in Brunello di Montalcino, and you have Nebbiolo. And by law, they can't release those wines for 5 years. It's like
right.
that's it. Like the DOCG has said, this is when these can be released, and for good reason. Uruguay doesn't have that, so they're releasing these wines and kind of expecting you to do that legwork.
Got it.
And so if it comes into the market and you open them, you're like, wow, this is a hard wine
It's a
to.
lot. It's like chewing a steak. It's a lot of
Yeah.
meat on the bone. And you're drinking a glass of young Tannat.
But we had the luxury of having some with age, and they were stunning. It
Okay.
just takes that kind of time for them to open up. The other interesting grape is also like a Basque grape is Marcelon, which is really
Oh,
only found in like Southwest France. And but yeah, if you have a bottle of Tannat around your house, like just tuck it away and wait 10 years.
did you see any of like the other Bordeaux varietals? Like, was there much Cabernet Sauvignon? Like, there's like they're producing that. It's just Tannat is really the grape of choice. And
Yeah, Cabernet Franc, especially
mm,
at Garzon, they're really leaning into that, and more of like the kind of like zippier Loire style of Cab Franc, which is kind of interesting.
mm,
There was some Cabernet Sauvignon planted. I don't know if I remember seeing any Merlot, but I think they probably do. They have a lot of hectares and vines planted.
mm.
Um, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Black Muscat is another one that's kicking around there. I think they are going hard in on Tanat. It's part of their history, and no one else is doing it. And I think if they find a way to make it either force everyone to hold them back, or you
Yeah.
know find a way to make it more approachable in the market, I think there could be success.
Yeah, it's interesting that wineries, like especially like a Garzon, wouldn't be doing that on their own. But maybe they are, and we're just not
Yeah, they're holding.
seeing
They
that.
definitely hold back a little bit, but not that. 6
Yeah.
years for a Brunello. Like
Yeah.
it's a tough investment. You need a lot of space.
Well, it sounds like it was a successful bucket list item.
Fantastic. Okay, so Germany. I'm sure you had some
Germany.
old wines. I'm sure you had some interesting wines. I'm sure you had zero to not.
I had no Tannat. I had no heavy red wine for that matter. Germany is not a place known for big reds. There is some red wine, as I alluded to earlier. One of the wines in the wine club shipment was the Rings Spätburgunder, which also known as Pinot Noir. So anytime
Mhm.
you see like Burgunder on the end of a grape varietal, that's basically Pinot. So you'll see like Grauburgunder, Weissburgunder, Spätburgunder, and those are all just the German names for like Pinot Gris, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Noir. If that is helpful, it was helpful for me. So maybe it'll be
So
helpful for
there's
you.
and they really do plant them all, right? Because the monks kind of went over there
They
too,
do.
right? So they have all of the Burgunders.
They have all the Burgunders, and they're very close to France. There's a ton of history there. I mean, like Germany, Germany as a wine growing region is ridiculous. I mean, we're talking like, a full 1,000 years that they've been doing this.
Crazy.
Like one of the wineries that we went to dated back to like 1300, Kartäuserhof, which is just insane. Like that is insane to me that something can be that long lived. So, yes, my trip was different than yours. It was longer. My trip was almost 10 days.
Wow.
flew into Frankfurt, which is really where you want to be flying into to get to most of the wine regions. And we kind of, we did a journey. So we stayed in a town called Ludwigshafen, which is
Mm.
not necessarily a town that I recommend staying in, like from like a cultural standpoint, but it was like a great centrally located place because we started in the Pfalz. Then we did this day by day. So we did day one was the Pfalz, then the Rheinhessen, then the Nahe, then the Rheingau, and then we switched and we stayed in Wiesbaden. If I'm butchering these, I'm so sorry if anyone speaks German.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
It's a lot of ground to cover. And then we finished up in the Mosel. The thing that surprised, I mean, there was a lot of things that surprised me, but number one, I've talked about a couple of times now since I've been back. The Mosel, number one, was so, you've been, yeah? No. You read about it in books. You see all the photos and you're like, yeah, steep slopes, slate, all the things, the vines growing basically into the water, the Mosel River. You see all this and then you get there and you're like, whoa, like Technicolor dreams unveiled. It was wild to see, like to roll up to the Mosel and see the Mosel in action, but then to see how steep these slopes are. I mean, we're talking like 80-degree inclines. Like you wouldn't ski this. It's so steep. And like these guys are literally harnessed in to the sides of the mountain, walking on, dinner plates that are sliding like this because it's all these like, slate. You call it soil, but it's like, it's not soil, it's just rocks. And these vines are just planted in the hillsides. And like, that's how they roll in the Mosel. But I think the most surprising thing was my interpretation of Germany was that everything in Germany was going to look like the Mosel. And that was probably the most surprising thing for me is that it wasn't. Outside of the Mosel, all of the regions that I just listed, like the Rheinhessen, the Nahe, the Pfalz, all of those places were much more forested and looked a lot more like Northern California than anything that I'd seen from the Mosel in pictures. So that was the most surprising thing. The other thing, I went in spring, as I mentioned, so it was late April, early May, which is spargel season. Do you know what spargel is?
No.
I think it's spargl. Spargel is asparagus.
Oh, so did you have 100 dishes of white asparagus, like morning, noon, and night?
All the colors of asparagus, all the colors of the asparagus rainbow. We had them morning, noon, and night in multiple different ways. Every way that one could have asparagus, we had asparagus. And that was actually one of the other really surprising things. I'm not someone that would consider themselves a connoisseur of asparagus. Like if I'm at a nice restaurant and they're like, oh, we have white asparagus. I'm like, all right, I'm not paying $50 for white asparagus. Like bring on the oysters, the caviar, something else. This asparagus was different. This asparagus was so good. It was like, it wasn't bitter. It was sweet. It wasn't like stalky and chewy. It was like crunchy and snappy. And having it in all of these different preparations was such a luxury because, you'd have, you go into like a nice restaurant during white asparagus season and you get 4 stalks and it's like $50, right? And they do like Berners or Hollandaise, right? And we were just having it like it was McDonald's French fries. I mean, it was like, it was in soup. It was as a side. It was as a salad. Like we literally walked past a restaurant where they just left a whole bucket of it outside. Like they were shaving the sides of it. And they're like, we'll just leave it out here. It's just a different situation there when it comes to asparagus.
Oh, that's so cool.
It works incredibly well with the wine, not just the Riesling. Our very first dinner was actually at Rings. And I talked about this with Zach a little bit in the last episode. That was very interesting because I went into, what do you think you eat outside of asparagus when you go to Germany? What would you expect?
I would do like schnitzel and pork cutlet and sausages.
Yeah. I was ready. I was like, don't check your cholesterol before and after because it's going to be bad. I was fully prepared for all of the fatty, fried, schnitzely, pasta spätzle, like all that stuff, right? Pork knuckle, which we did have. It was so we of course had all of those foods, but the very first dinner that we had was like, it was, we call like French picnic, right? It was salads and pâtés and fresh vegetables and crudités. And like, it was so lovely. And you looked around and you see the topography. And of course that's what you have because look around you. It looks like Northern California where fresh produce grows. And that really is the case there. So that was a very big takeaway. The Riesling was incredible. I assume you're a fan of German Riesling.
I do love German Riesling, and I like the Rheinhessen a lot. I like as a region,
Mm.
like, but that stands out to me. But like after being there in the places, like, was there one that you're like, if I go to a store now, this is what I'm going to reach for, like region wise?
Oh, one of them is Schaefer Freilich. I don't know if you know that
Mm-hmm.
producer. Um, that was one of those producers that like a lot of people knew of because I dare to venture and call him culty, but he's kind of culty and like very well known in the geeky or Som community. I
Mm-hmm.
was unaware of Schaefer Freilich. That was a really cool experience. He's a very unique character. The wines were electric. Yeah, some of the other ones loved like Wagner Stempel and the Rheinhessen. Wegler, which I think is another one
Yep.
that you guys have had. I think there was a Wegler that was like that had a little bit of age on it that was super super good. It was like a 2018 or something.
I'm curious, like when you do a taste. I mean, I've obviously I've done tastings around the world, and various places, but like I've never been to Germany. Like, what is
Hmm.
their average? All right, so you went to a lot of wineries, right? Like, you sit down at the winery.
Yes.
Are you having 12 wines, 6 wines, 3 wines? Like, do they do oldest to newest?
Jenna, who is the founder of German Wine Collection, she capped it. So
Oh,
she was like, I think it was like 8 to 10 of your best, no more. So we could not sit down for a flight of 20.
okay.
I think there was maybe an exception or two made, but no, we were not sitting down for more than 8 to 10. And I mean, it depends on the winery, right? Some wineries are very Riesling specific, but others, like Raumland, for example, they specialize in Sekt, which is German sparkling wine. And so, no, I wouldn't, as much as I would say there was a through line between all the things that we were tasting, there were no two tasting experiences that were alike because some wineries had libraries to play with. Some wineries like
Mhm.
Rings really did kind of specialize more in the Spätburgunder and like the Burgunders of the world. And then you went to like JJ Prum and it's just Riesling and all different very site specific Rieslings from single vineyards in all different levels of sweetness, which is another thing that we should
And would
probably
they
talk
kind of
about.
like go up and down in sweetness? Like, you're going to do this
Yeah.
vineyard and then taste through the sweetness. Then you're going to start in this vineyard and taste through the sweetness. Like,
As Psalms, I think you and I would assume that they would save all the sweet for the end, right? All the
right.
Auslese, Spätlese, everything you normally do sweet at the end because our feeling is that your palate kind of gets compromised once there's sugar involved. That wasn't always the case. A lot of times it was showing the different vineyards with the varying levels of sweetness in between. So, like the very last winery that we did in the Mosel, we went to Hart. That was very much mixed in. Same with JJ Prum, very much mixed in, showing all of the different single vineyards that they work with and then showing all the various different sweetnesses from there. So they were not afraid to mix in dry and sweet. And they were really proud of showing how the different vineyards can display themselves with various levels of sweetness. We ate a lot of food while we were tasting. Like a lot of
Oh,
times some of those wines were
that's
mixed
nice.
into like lunches and dinners, which was nice. But I didn't mind. And it did kind of reset things for me when I'm thinking about sweetness now and that our palates are very capable of resetting themselves. Like you don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to just put sweet at the end. Like it's okay to mix it in. So that was like a kind of a big takeaway for me.
Would they do that with pairing too? Like in dining, would you like kind of get a sweeter wine in the middle and then go back to drier wines?
Yeah,
'Cause
definitely.
that could be interesting at the table.
Yeah, again, I think like they weren't afraid of sweetness. I think one of the things that have talked about in the past is this idea that sweetness has sort of become this weirdly bad word in wine. And the Germans are just like, yeah, like sometimes these wines have sugar, like it's okay.
Yeah.
It's it's a good thing. So yeah, sometimes they were mixed in like that. And I loved it, especially within the meal, because again, if you're eating lots of different foods, like if you have a 10-course meal, chances are in that 10-course meal, there's going to be lots of different flavors, right? You're going to have spice, you're going
Mhm.
to have sweet, you're going to have umami. Your palate resets after each course.
Right.
And you kind of, look forward to maybe savory things towards the end and then finishing with sweet. And maybe there is that order of business that you're sort of used to, but I think the same can be true with wine, and that you can kind of mix it up and have reds at different times and have sparklings at different times. Like, they really just didn't seem afraid to do, for as orderly as the Germans tend to be.
You're like, they were definitely on time everywhere. You were probably on time everywhere, huh?
We were very on time.
Would you think this was the most punctual wine trip you've ever been on?
Yes.
I've done these wine trips where you are just like, you're behind from the get-go. Like, you get off the plane and you're already late to something, and you never catch up.
It was there were a lot of things that were very German. There were a lot of things that were like, that's surprising. But yes, timeliness was not surprising. So Stefan, who works for German Wine Collection, he was sort of in charge of making sure that we stayed. The only time that we were late is when we got stuck in some nasty traffic, but we figured it all out and accommodations were made, but we still got back to the hotel on time. We were not we didn't get back to the hotel later than we should have, I don't think, any night, which is amazing on a wine trip.
9 days. Were there any instances where things it's a long time to be corralling a group. Like, did you guys have any mishaps?
We had a few gas station stops, intentional, which was very fun. Big fan of European gas stations of all. If you're traveling in Europe, please stop at a gas station. They're so fun.
How's the coffee situation in Germany?
It was garbage. Of course it was garbage. But to be fair, we were in hotels. There was no place to get good coffee. I'm sure that good coffee exists in Germany. Right. I just didn't find it.
But not like the Italian gas station.
No.
Gas stations in Italy have an espresso bar, and they're perfect espressos.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that. But, pretzels, lots of
pretzels. Were good pretzels?
Good pretzels.
And did you get to have some beer? Did you get any beer?
At every turn, yes, at every gas station stop, you had to have a beer and a pretzel. That was we had these times built into the trip. And this is what I'm saying. For as much as we did, everything was very timed. It was really fun because that actually breaks it up a lot. The monotony, not monotony, but it can be a grind when you're going from winery to winery to stop and have a beer and have a pretzel and smell some diesel.
Yeah, just like you're saying, it's a good reset, right? Like a meal needs a reset.
Yes,
people need resets, and a beer and a pretzel is perfect. How are the accommodations? Were you changing hotels every couple of days, or?
We weren't. So again, total pros. So you can stay in all of these different wine regions of Germany, all the ones that I just listed, but it's not, you've done this a million times. I'm actually curious what your thoughts are. I hate changing hotels. It's my, by the time the day is done, the last thing I want to do is pack up and do it all again. Plus, this is how I lose all of my chargers and electronics.
Yeah.
So no, we stayed in one hotel for 6 nights and another hotel for 3 nights.
It's beautiful.
And it was lovely.
That's a beautiful thing.
So my recommendation is if you're visiting Germany, one, I would consider doing the boat cruise, up and that. To me, the Douro and the Mosel cruises, those are two that make the most sense to me if you're going to go that route, because it is you can drive in Germany obviously and have a lot of fun doing it, but the rivers are just so beautiful,
right.
It makes sense to do that. But no, if you're doing wine travel and you want to squeeze a lot in, I would try to stay in one place as long as you can, but also it's a place where walking, hiking, and biking culture is very big. Mm-hmm. So that's also something to keep in mind. They have, especially along the Mosel, they have really, really long walking and biking paths all along the river there, which was really nice, and cute little towns.
A non-industry person going there wants to do somewhat, do you think one winery a day, 2? Because I tell people when they come to Napa, 2 is probably a good amount. What do you think in Germany, 1 or 2 a day?
I think 1 or 2 a day. You might be able to get away with 3, just depending on the winery. A JJ Prum doesn't open its doors to the public, but they, we got to see some of the vineyards, and so that took up a little bit more time. But the tastings themselves generally aren't that long. They're not, and also I could drink Riesling all day personally. My teeth might feel otherwise, but bring Sensodyne with you. But to me, it's not like Napa Valley where it's like these heavy Napa cabs where you're like, ugh, like I can only drink some, and that's just a personal thing. So no, I think you could reasonably do more like 3 or even 4 a day, just depending on, but
Wow.
you know, stop for lunch, stop for dinner, stop for snacks, do the gas station thing. Have you ever heard of a doner kebab? This is also.
Oh, is that the hot dog in like that's wrapped?
It's not. It's like it's almost like a gyro. It's delicious. It's like their sandwich. So if you know Philly has a cheesesteak and like you can have like gyro, like it's like their version of a gyro. It was so delicious. I don't even know what was on it, but it was so good. And I still it was the very first thing that we had to eat when we arrived at the hotel from the airport. They went out and got a whole bunch of like doner kebabs, and there was like it's like sliced meat, almost like al pastor style.
Oh.
And then like pickled, marinated, like veg on like some sort of, I'm not explaining this correctly.
And it's like rolled, right? It's like kind of like a wrap, but like a conical wrap,
It's like
right?
a pita. It's like a pita. It like really does look like a gyro, but I'm sure there's other versions of it. But I have dreams about when we had it the first night and then we didn't have it again for like 6 more nights. I was very disappointed. I wasn't hungry, to be clear, but I was disappointed. I wanted more. And because
is it a meal or is it a snack?
Well, I guess it depends on who you're asking.
Is it like a taco?
It's like asking someone, is a cheesesteak a meal or a snack?
Yeah, like I guess that's true. Like a cheesesteak to me is like a meal, but a taco can be like tacos can be like a dessert taco.
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's bigger than like an empanada or like a street taco.
Okay,
it's sizable. Like I mostly shared one because it was too much for me to eat. But
okay, all right.
But it's like the perfect antidote for these, you know, very high acid lean wines, because as much as you're tasting lots of different things and sometimes there's sugar involved, sometimes there's not, I wasn't joking, like bring Sensodyne, your enamel will be,
you just feel it, right?
Yeah. It's a cooler region. It was, you know, a little bit rainy because it was the spring a few days, but then when it wasn't raining, it was gorgeous. But these wines, because it is a cooler region, you know, they tend to be very high acid, and they want food and they want, you know, like a fatty. Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about the bubbles. I know you love champagne. I love champagne. We love bubbles. Like what do you think? Are you buying German sect?
I'm getting on the train.
Okay.
The train left the station a long time. So German sect has been around for a very long time, but as some of you might already know, its reputation hasn't been the most stellar over the past few decades, because there was no VDP class, or there was no like separate classification. So like German sect was German sect was German sect, right? Like there was kind of like an anything goes situation. And more recently, the VDP is now including a sect category, which means the quality of German sparkling wine is starting to improve pretty dramatically and pretty quickly. So I mentioned Raumland, you know, one of the more famous producers of German sect, really fantastic. And you're seeing it made from the traditional Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but then or Spätburgunder and Chardonnay. But you're also seeing it made from Riesling, or even a combination of like Riesling and Pinot. I would be remiss not to call out Kartäuserhof, though, which I think is probably one of the more exciting places for sect outside of Raumland, because a few years ago, they hired the chef de cave from a little fledgling champagne house called Bollinger.
Wow.
And so they brought him in like 2018, 19, somewhere around there. And they just released their very first sect that he made, I think from the 2021 vintage, that I actually used in my Aspen Food and Wine seminar, and it was fantastic. It's smaller production. It was their first one, but.
Is it expensive?
It's not unreasonable, but it's not cheap. I think that the Kartäuserhof was like, I think it's like $70 retail, maybe 80.
Okay.
So it's in line with champagne, but the quality's there. Like they're aging it, you know, in a similar fashion. But we actually did like a master class on sect and tasted a lot of different things. And so you're seeing more producers who are excited about sect. I think one of the biggest controversies, so to speak, in Germany right now is this idea of planting more Burgundian varietals. And a lot of people have feelings about that because they want Riesling in the same way that Tannat is the grape of Uruguay. They want Riesling to remain the grape of Germany. But, the reality is Pinot Noir and Chardonnay do very well there on their own. And then they also do very well in sparkling. And now with this sect category as, a very, within the VDP as being something more people are going to be paying attention to, you're seeing more plantings of it. So
yeah, it's kind of sad to see it change, but that's the world, right? I mean, the wine world's always kind of moving and shifting. And
so that's Germany in a nutshell. It was very fun. It was very intense. If you are, if you're on Instagram, everyone's on Instagram. If you go to Instagram and go to the German wine collections Instagram, I thought it would be fun to I won't say whether I did it or not, but I did it. I filmed Jenna. I put together a whole bunch of daily videos that went on their Instagram. I'm not in them at all, but I thought it would be fun to document in that way. So you can kind of see all the days of the trip according from Jenna's eyes, but through the lens that I was filming that I put together.
Cool.
Because I thought that would be a fun, more so than my experience. Jenna is so wonderful and knows the region so well and is so excited about it. I thought it would be more fun to have her face on camera. So if you want to get more of an idea of where we went and some of the producers and some of the history of the producers, because there's so much history, that's a good place to do that. I will list basically our full itinerary in the description below if you're curious about any of the places that we went, but also it's basically all of the producers that are in the German wine collection portfolio. It was their importer trip. They did not pay me to go, but they did basically, allow me to tack on. So I wanted to, before we wrap, I wanted to get some further updates. Number one, you are turning 40 this year. How is your 1985 wine drinking journey going?
Have some Barolo. I think we're going to open for that. Maybe find some vintage champagne. I definitely have some vintage port.
Nice. Oh, 85 is a great port year.
Actually, what you mentioned is I'm doing a river cruise from Budapest to Prague.
Oh, that's fun.
On the Danube. Yeah. So, I'll hit up one wine region while I'm there in Austria, I think in Wachau, but
okay. That's so fun. Why are you doing this? Just for vacation?
It's for my birthday. My mom is turning 80 this year. I'm turning 40. So we're doing a river cruise, and I'd love to go see, I didn't want to drag her down on a wine trip, but this will be, wine adjacent.
I think that I had a sort of stigma about river cruises, and that's quickly going by the wayside now that I'm visiting these places. And
I'll report back. I have been told I'll probably be one of the younger people on the boat, but
that's okay.
That's okay. I like to read and take naps. I'm fine with it.
When I did that Nat Geo cruise in the Pacific Northwest, we were the youngest ones there by a couple decades, and they were up earlier, out later, partying. Those, don't be fooled.
Yeah, they don't have jobs to ground them.
I know, so, these retirees are crushing life right now. And we could maybe learn a thing or two. Speaking of learning a thing or two, I hope that you've all learned a thing or two about both Uruguay and Germany, two places I never thought to combine in one episode, but why the hell not? And if you enjoyed learning this episode and weren't drinking with us, this delicious single vineyard Albariño that Laura plucked from the hills of Uruguay, you can rectify that by joining the Wine Access Unfiltered podcast wine club. All of the information, as I mentioned, is in the description below. It's $120 plus tax, but including shipping that you will receive about every other month. We do obviously full episodes around the wine where the wine is intertwined or interwoven. And then I also do tasting videos for each of the wines if you want to take a deeper dive on the things that we're tasting and we're smelling and learn a little bit more about the history. So you can geek out a little bit. So that's the gist with that. Laura, I wish you a wonderful rest of your year. I hope it goes as well as the first half did.
Yeah, I'm wishing you such good, good vibes for the coming events that are
thank you,
happening. And hopefully we'll be able to drink in person soon and And cheers to 100 episodes. Amazing.
Cheers to 100 episodes. I'm sorry that we didn't have champagne for the episode, but I'm also not that sorry because this is very delicious. So thank you.
There's time for champagne.
All right. Well, cheers, you guys. Thanks for being with us for 100. We'll see you for the next 100.
Cheers.